So the next learning objective is a continuation from 1.11 where we're talking about solving equations. All right, you can see there's only one new thing, and that's this extra b inside the parentheses. And the great thing about doing this self-paced thing is you should only be moving on to this learning objective when you understand the previous one and you can do all the previous problems, because this one is directly related to that. It's basically just one extra step on the previous learning objective. All right, so make sure you're not going on to this video and trying practicing things until you have a handle on 1.11, which is when this b isn't there. All right, but we want to focus on these new problems. All right, but if you can do the previous ones, this is all going to make sense. All right, so when we were learning about the graphs of sine and cosine, we saw that we could change how often the function repeats. And that's actually, when we were graphing them, we actually called it b. And it looked like that, and that would change how often the period was. Now when we're solving these answers, the answers will be a little bit different because the graph is kind of getting shrunk or expanded, but the techniques are still going to be the same. So we're going to end up doing this using a process of substitution. And really it's just going to add kind of one step at the beginning and one step at the end to what we were doing in the previous learning objective. All right, so solve 4x equals 1/2. All right, we learned how to do it without the 4 in the previous learning objective. And since we know how to do that, we're going to use that to our advantage. All right, so we know how to solve if it was just a single x without the 4. So that's really what our first step is going to be. We're going to rewrite this equation. We're going to say something like, all right, pick your favorite letter. I'm going to end up using u a lot, because there's this thing in calculus called u substitution. So a lot of times when I do substitution, I use u. But you can use whatever letter other than probably x or y. All right, but u is equal to 4x. So I'm going to rewrite this equation as sine of u equals 1/2, because I'm just replacing 4x with the thing that it's equal to, u. And now this new equation I created, sine of u equals 1/2, those are the exact type of equations we learned to solve in the last learning objective. All right, so this part, I'm going to go through. All right, we know that the answers for this, again, our variable is u, so we know this is u is equal to, let's see, sine is 1/2 at pi over 6. And again, we know these types of equations. I'm kind of ignoring the top line right now. These type of equations repeat every 2 pi. All right, so that's one of my answers. And I'm pretty sure this is an exact example we did in that last learning objective video. All right, 5 pi over 6 is going to be the other solution. All right, so inside those kind of 2 red lines are the exact types of problems we did in the previous learning objectives. All right, so hopefully you kind of understand where these answers are coming from. But now we have to remember something, is we have these answers for u, and that's not the original variable we cared about. All right, so now we remember u is not actually what we care about. We care about the fact that u is equal to 4x. So basically, I undo the substitution I did at the beginning. And if we're solving an equation, we want to make sure that the x is by itself. So how do I get the x by itself? I have to divide both sides by 4. The other way to think about it, what's going to kind of be helpful in this case, is multiplying by 1/4. Because if I multiply 4 by 1/4, it cancels out. But I have to make sure I do it on both sides of the equation, so the whole right side of the equation, I'm going to multiply by 1/4. All right, so that's good, because again, here, those cancel out, and I'm just going to get x's on the left now. On the right, I have to remember to distribute this 1/4 into both of those things. So pi over 6 times 1/4, I'm going to get the pi on the top, and 6 times 4 is 24. 2 pi k over 4, I really just focusing on the 2 part, because that is a number. 2 times 1/4 is 1/2. And the pi k is just going to stick around because it doesn't cancel out with anything. The bottom's very similar. 5 pi times 1 is 5 pi. 6 times 4 is 24. And 2 pi k divided by 4, the 2 and the 4 simplify to 1/2. All right, so this is my final answer down here. But it all requires this middle step of where you're basically just doing the previous learning objective. So the first thing is I replace the complicated thing on the inside of that parentheses with just a single letter. I'm going to use u. You use whatever letter you want. All right, this middle box is exactly what we did in the previous learning objective. And then you just undo your substitution to get your final answer. So now we can see the kind of initial angles that are going to make this true. And you can see they repeat at a different rate. They repeat every pi over 2 or 1/2 pi rather than every 2 pi. And that's because I'm going around the circle faster because of that 4. But the process of solving these, like I said, is just kind of one extra step at the beginning, doing substitution, one extra step at the end, undoing that substitution. And you can get the answers similar to how we did in the last ones. All right, so here's yours to try. All right, a couple of things to be aware of. It's just cosine. So remember, cosine you're going to solve slightly differently than sine because it's x values instead of y values. All right, so go ahead and try to solve this one. And here's the solution. All right, so you make u2x, you solve cosine of u equals the square root of 3 over 2, and then you basically end up dividing everything by 2, multiplying things by 1/2, same thing, all right, to get that answer at the bottom. All right, so nothing's really going to change in this whole video. All right, just other things. This one just has a fraction, but we're still going to go through it the same way. All right, u is whatever's on the inside of that parentheses, because I just want to make it as simple as possible. Just cosine of a single letter or a single variable equals that number. Because that equation that I just wrote is exactly the last learning objective. I'm pretty sure we did this exact example in that video as well. We figured out that u was 3 pi over 4 plus 2 pi k, and u is 5 pi over 4 plus 2 pi k. Again, so that was the last learning objective piece. But now we go back and remember that, well, actually u is x over 8. And again, our final goal whenever we're solving an equation is always get our variable x by itself. So to get rid of this over 8, I have to multiply both sides by 8, because that'll cancel out that fraction. And now I get my final answer, just the x's on the left. On the right, 3 pi times 8 is going to be 24 pi over 4 plus 16 pi k. And then 8 times 5 is 40 over 4 plus 16 pi k. That's again, don't forget to distribute this 8 into both of those pieces so you get the new angle and the new period, which is how often these answers are going to repeat. All right, that answer is perfectly acceptable. One thing you can do on the fractions, they're all even, so 24 over 4 could simplify to 6. And 40 over 4 could simplify to 10. All right, so you can see nothing really changed from the last example we did. It's just another example. In this case, we had to multiply by 8 instead of dividing because we had a fraction. All right, but same idea for all these. You basically make it a simpler problem first, solve that the way we did in the previous learning objective, and then just kind of multiply or divide at the end to get your actual final answer down there. All right, so another problem for you to try on your own. Again, this one's sine instead of cosine, so keep that in mind. And you have x over 4. And here's the final solution for this problem. Again, either one of these, all right, this was the kind of initial thing you would get if you simplify the fraction, so get the one on the right. All right, again, so look over that. If you're kind of confused where the answers are coming from at any point, all right, that's when you can call me over and kind of walk you through this one-on-one to kind of explain what's going on. And again, to wrap up, at what rate will the solutions to the following equations repeat? So it's not asking you to solve the whole problem, but that might be kind of how you end up answering it. At the end of these problems, we've had things like plus 2 pi k, plus 16 pi k, those types of things. All right, what is that part of this solution going to be for cosine of 16x equals 1/2? And again, once you answer this multiple choice question, I go ahead and start working on the practice related to these problems. All right, and kind of working on how to solve these ones where you have an extra number in the parentheses.